All right, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Aware Athlete Show. And today we're very pleased to have with us as our guest, Gary Buckman. And Gary has been a top level gymnast. He's also been a coach of elite athletes, many elite athletes. He's run a successful business. He's an entrepreneur. And he's been an inspirational speaker and spoken to people around the world. But Gary also has a story of overcoming a very severe injury that he got when he was training for gymnastics, a broken neck. And during the process of recovering from that, Gary had to break through barriers and persevere and come up with new ways of thinking about things. And in that process, he developed some ways that he could also help other elite athletes to do the same things and to achieve a high level of success in their lives. So we're very much looking forward to hearing about Gary's story tonight. He's also writing a book. Maybe we'll hear about that also. But we're looking forward to hearing about his story and seeing what we can learn from that ourselves. And I'm ready to be inspired. So Gary, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much, Scott. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So let me ask you, what was it in your background? I'm guessing that to become a very successful gymnast, you have to start when you're very young.
Well, you know, that's true. But when I was coming up in the sport, they didn't have it until high school. There was no private clubs in those days. You know, I started gymnastics way back in the 60s. And it wasn't real popular, you know. So at that time, they didn't have the private club system like they have nowadays. So you had to, you know, actually wait until you got into high school. And it's kind of a funny way I got into it because I was very active in sports as a young kid, but I was always small. So, you know, I was okay playing flag football on the street with my buddies and, you know, shooting hoops and doing whatever. But when I got into high school, I was so little that I couldn't play any of the sports. And I kind of had been taking some tumbling classes when I was in intermediate school. And then they had a gymnastics program at my high school. And so that worked out pretty good. I went out for gymnastics, you know, my freshman year. And, you know, just to let you know how small I was 4'11" and 78 pounds at 15 years old.
Wow. Yeah.
You know,
I think when I was 14 or so, I was already well over 6 feet.
yeah. I remember the first day of high school, I was walking down the corridors and a bunch of these, you know, big seniors, you know, said, "Hey kid, I think you're lost. The elementary school's down the street." You know, so, but it worked, you know, it was nice that I could, you know, that I got involved with, you know, gymnastics. So, yeah, I didn't start until I was like, you know, 15 years old. And so,
So it was your other sports background that really got you enough movement knowledge to be able to pick that up then.
yeah, you know, and as a little kid, you know, I to overcome my size and stuff, I used to teach myself how to do different feats. Like I learned how to walk on my hands. I taught myself how to ride a unicycle when I was in the 5th grade.
So you
And
had
so
been
that,
training yourself for gymnastics even though you didn't know it.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how it worked out. So, yeah.
A lot of very successful athletes have shared similar stories. I remember Jim Ryan was he was tall and lanky, but he was a scrawny kid. You know, he wasn't much at football and couldn't find anything he could quite succeed at. And then they in some physical ed class they had him run a mile.
Yeah.
5 something miles, and they thought, you know, he might be pretty good at this. So yeah.
Yeah, the rest, yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. It's funny how we all get started into something like that, you know.
It is. So as a freshman, you began to pick up on gymnastics then, and
Yeah, and you know, it was kind of do or die situation because we didn't have a JV team like they have on other sports. You either made the varsity team or you didn't make it.
Wow.
And so I worked really, really hard, and and I had a good coach, and I made the varsity team my freshman year, and I just in a few events, And then as it progressed on, I turned into an all-around gymnast where I did all 6 Olympic events.
Wow.
And really, really excelled and enjoyed it. And then I went on to college, and it was such a different thing when I moved from high school to college, because in high school, like I said, we weren't really accepted as a sport yet, and so no one would come and watch us. If we had 13 people in the audience, which were all parents, no students, that was a huge crowd. And then I went up onto Chico State University, and we were the #1 sport, in college, and 6,000 people showed up to the competitions.
Wow.
And so I went from nothing to 6,000 people showing up, and it was quite a transition. But
No kidding. Did the pressure seem different to you when you got into that environment?
Yeah, for sure. I remember my first home meet, was against UNLV, and it was like a Saturday afternoon, and I went into the gym an hour and a half early to warm up, and all the bleachers were out, and I was kind of laughing to myself, thinking, wow, that one section over there would have been plenty enough, for the crowd. And then people started coming in, and I thought, oh wow, maybe like 100 people are going to show up here today, and I'm getting all excited. And the next thing I know, I stopped to put my grips on for high bar, and I look around, and the whole place is filling up, and there's like 12 doors open, and everybody's still packing in, So I ran over to one of the seniors on the team, and I said, hey, is there a basketball game after this? And he goes, no. And I said, is there a wrestling meet? He goes, no. I said, what is everybody doing here? He says, oh, didn't they tell you? We're like the #1 sport at Chico State, And so I remember, like the first event, floor exercise, I mounted with my first tumbling pass, and the crowd erupted. And, we weren't used to that, like it was really quiet in high school. And so I'm thinking, I hit the skill, and I'm standing there, and I'm going, wait a minute, everybody, my routine's not over, and then all of a sudden I kind of went, oh, wow, what is my routine? I almost lost it all on the floor because, I never had all that attention.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was completely different. But I can tell you that it was so much fun because the crowd was very educated and they appreciated everything. And once I got over that, I started using the crowd's energy to spur me on. So
it was career developed. Did you continue to excel in each of the all 6 of the events, or did you specialize? Or?
Yeah, I kept getting stronger and stronger, and how male athletes mature physically later, so like I started getting much stronger my freshman and sophomore year in college. And so, yeah, all the events started to excel quite a bit. And then, in the vaulting event where, I got injured, I was doing just a basic, vault at the time. And I was at this big invitational in San Jose State, and the reigning national vaulting champion was there. And he came over to my coach and said, hey, I think your boy Buckman is a good candidate for this new vault, a handspring front vault. And, and then after that, it was like, okay, my head exploded, my coach's head exploded, and our egos were feeding off each other. And I'm thinking, okay, this would change my whole all-around score if I could just, get this vault, and, it would raise my all-around score by a point, which is a lot in gymnastics, So, yeah, I started to focus a little bit more that, on that vaulting event for that one season, which was a big mistake. It's funny that your show is the aware athlete, and the reason I got hurt because I was an unaware athlete.
So no, you didn't try that new routine in the meet, did you?
No, what I did was, I was at that competition, and, my coach came running over and said, Jim Turpin thinks you can do this vault. And then I said, okay. And it was like, he goes, oh, do you want to do it? And I said, yeah. And so, this was like a Saturday afternoon meet. And on Monday at practice, we started training, and which was crazy. In hindsight, I look back and say, that's crazy, because I never incorporated new things in my routine in mid-season. I would train them for 5-6 months and then put them in the next year. But like I said, my ego was going crazy at 20, and so I just started training it, and I trained it for like 3 weeks straight. Every day we trained it, along with the other events, and I had the physical ability to do this vault, but I didn't know all of this, the skills, because this was a multiple flipping vault, which only 2 or 3 people at the time were trying. And most of those guys were skilled trampolinists that had a lot of air sense and big, strong thighs. And, so I started training it, and I was all over the place, like I would land on my feet every once in a while, but most of the time I was landing on my face or on my back or on my butt or, everywhere but my feet. And every once in a while I would land on my feet, and that was enough encouragement to keep me going. And then I actually, 3 weeks later, the coach said, let's unleash it on the crowd, in a meet. And, just sheer determination and, the grace of God and, everything else, I actually stood the vault up in the meet, scored a 9.7, out of a 10, and, the crowd went crazy because they'd never seen one. And so then I was hooked.
Wow.
I was hooked on it, but even getting back to practice after that, I was still crashing and burning all over the place because I hadn't gone through all of the training and lead up skills. And it was a multiple flipping forward vault, which is a blind landing all the time. So, that's, I set myself up for, really set myself up for disaster. Basically, I didn't even know,
Yeah, that's a big deal. Making sure you master all the little parts of a complex skill like that, isn't it? There's a big step up from what you were doing.
Yeah, huge step up. Yeah, I went from a single handspring vault to a 1.5, a double flipping vault, and it's crazy,
Yeah, so nailing it in that meet wasn't necessarily the best thing. Was it?
No, that was probably the worst thing that could have happened to me.
Yeah,
Because then
if you'd have flubbed it a little bit, you probably would have spent a lot more time training on it. Yeah.
Exactly.
So can you, first of all, it's kind of tough to be an athlete and a student.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you find that combination? Did your intense training that take away from your academics, or did you blend those in pretty well? Or?
No, I kept a 3.6 grade point average. I really focused on school because I knew that, I needed to get a degree, physical education to go out in the real world. And I'd always been good at school. So, I enjoyed it. So I had I actually got a academic scholarship, out of high school into college. So I just maintained it, but that was one of the things too, though. I was working my way through college, so yeah, talking about balancing things, and I was a janitor at a mall, so I would get up at 4 a.m. and go to the mall and clean the mall before my classes started at 8 o'clock, and I would, go to school all day, and then I would practice from 3 to 6:30 in the afternoon, and then I'd have to sometimes go back to school for labs from 7 to 10 at night or whatever, and then do homework. So I was only getting like 4 hours of sleep a night, but at age 20 you think you can do anything.
Yeah,
So and I think, yeah, so I had to balance it, but I didn't really balance the time all that well, but I didn't let my grades suffer and I didn't let the sport suffer.
Yeah, so you made it through both of those things at a high level. But
Yeah.
how do you think the 4 hours a night sleep actually affected your athletic performance?
I think it really, I think it's one of the, leading factors to, me getting injured. I think that, you need that recoup time, and being a kinesiology and physiology major, I know how the body works and, but I wasn't paying enough attention to it. So I think that lack of sleep was one of the things that, caused me to make the mental error that I did in practice. And,
No.
it was one of the main, reasons for the injury.
So as you've coached a lot of athletes in your life, on that particular point, how do you kind of encourage them to get enough sleep? studies have shown that 7 to 9 hours sleep makes a much better athlete than less than that.
Yeah. It's nice because, I had an advantage. I went to work in the private sector, the private club system, where I wasn't in the school system. So what I did was, I emphasized, uh, in my coaching about, getting enough recuperation time and doing things. So I actually had my athletes come in, I got them out of school early and got them into the gym at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon and let them go home, by 6 o'clock at night. So they could go home and do homework, eat, do homework and get to bed, at a decent hour. But yeah, and it was, and one of the things that was nice was, how the athletes, I allowed them in the gym, to be able to actually, I had chairs set up, like on the vault runway, like chairs with desk, like desk chairs, those old time wooden ones. And I said, just as long as you don't miss a turn, you guys can be doing your homework in between turns, to give them, to help them out a little bit so that they wouldn't have to go home and stay up late at night, and the older ones would help the younger ones. And so it was kind of a nice situation. Everybody was able to, a lot of people finished their homework at practice,
Well,
in between,
that's so interesting. And I think you say the older ones would help the younger ones.
Yeah.
You never really appreciate how you feed off and rely on the other people around you until you're out of that situation sometimes. But that's very good. You had the athletes communicating and helping one another. So it was kind of a teamwork situation there too.
Yeah, exactly.
As far as what I've read, John Wooden, a very successful basketball coach at UCLA, he was very, very disciplined about getting the kids in, focus on your practice, get the practice done, and go home type of thing. Where he wasn't going to drag them into 2 or 3 extra hours of practice just because they needed a little bit more. He was very focused, and then you guys go home and pay attention to your academics too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's, and that's the whole thing. I mean, the athletes have to learn, that there has to be that balance between everything, and that's how life is. So, that's one of the greatest things about sports. It teaches you all these life skills. Like I used to tell people that, like gymnastics was almost a byproduct of what I was teaching these kids, because they learned about time management, goal setting, conflict resolution, just, all kinds of different things, just having to, spend that much time in the gym every day, because they were in the gym like 5 days a week, So, yeah, I used to say, yeah, and then when they got out, I in my book, one of the things I said, the greatest compliment I ever got as a coach came to me in a grocery store one day. And it was one that came from a parent of a beginning level competitor, because I had all levels in the gym, and so, she said, oh, wow. She says, I can't thank you enough. Tori's at UCLA now. She's the president of her sorority. She's got a double major, and she's getting, like straight A's, and it's all because of everything you taught her in gymnastics. And I went, wow, I don't remember that being on the curriculum, but she said, yeah, all the discipline that she learned of all those different things, to be able to do gymnastics, she just incorporated them in life now. And that's why she, and so a lot of the kids went out and very successful in life.
You provided a very good learning environment for them.
Yeah.
Excellent. So I'd like to get into your injury and some of the things you learned from that, but you already brought up awareness, and it seems like people, who was it, Eckhart Tolle that popularized the saying "Be here now." A lot of people have talked about that, but so awareness starts with, what would you say? What can I do now? What can I not do? Just a real awareness of where you're at. And you were speaking about that in terms of your the background for your injury.
Yeah, if I would have been a little bit, more aware of, listening to my, basically to my intuition, my gut feeling, or my higher self, whatever you want to call it, the little voice was kept saying like, what are you doing? Why are you trying this vault now? Why, you need to just focus on this season and do what you're doing, and afterwards, go through the right progressions and steps and learn this thing the right way. And, I didn't listen to that. And, you know, and I think the thing was, is that the, the coach and I were both feeding off each other's ego, and he's, he just skipped steps with me, you know what I mean? And I was just trusting in him and thinking I could handle this situation. And, here, it was obvious that I was crashing and burning on more vaults, landing them wrong than I was landing them right. Just to give you a perspective of, if I did 15 vaults in a practice, I might land one.
Oh,
that's not good odds, but I just kept going, yeah. So it's like, I needed to stop and draw back and say, wait, I need to just learn this the right way. And, lack of kinesthetic awareness, in the air, while I was in the air, is what, made me make a snap decision that, cost me 3 years of my life.
Yeah, 3 tough years. I've gone through 4 years of training as a Feldenkrais practitioner. And one thing Moshe Feldenkrais would use to define good movement, well, he might say that any complex skill can be taught if you can break it down into enough components. But he might also say that the test of good movement is whether you can reverse it or not. So in teaching a handstand, he would teach, the basis of initiating the handstand in good balance, and then, can you come out of that, or he would teach it as controlled falling sometimes too, as well as, so he would break it down into a lot of steps. And that's what you're saying, there's a lot of complex skills to learn there. And I'm pretty darn sure that as a very successful coach, you really had a nice handle on breaking all these skills into small parts. And
yeah.
Can you talk about that a little bit? How did you do that and how did you take an athlete and you say, well, this one's learning a little bit slower on this one, and so we need a little bit more time with him and keep him encouraged in the meantime.
Yeah, that's what the injury did for me. I got injured because I skipped steps, and wasn't aware of where I was. So I thought I made a good decision, and it ended up being a very bad decision. So what the injury did for me was that I made sure that, first and utmost, I was never going to let that ever happen to one of my athletes, because that was like the worst 3 years of my life. And, so I came up with, a step-by-step progressive, program that was all based on basics, and awareness. And what I did with my athletes was I told them, I said, look, I'm not going to lie to you. These basics are boring, a pain in the rear end, and no fun, but they're so necessary, for you to be able to make adjustments anytime that you want in midair, to save yourself first and utmost, and secondly, to be consistent. And consistency is where, most of the success happens, because you could be the top athlete, but if you're not consistent at it, then, somebody with lesser talent is going to come along and, beat you. So anyway, I took that injury, and came up with a program, and the kids were so successful, in being able to do things. I used to tell coaches at coaches clinics, I said, we need to do our job in the gym, because when we go to competitions, we're just like the audience or the parents. We're just watching. We can't spot them. We can't coach them. We can't help them do anything. And if we didn't, they're on their own. So, they better be totally aware of everything that they're doing at all times. So my program came out of, my injury, was that when my, athletes initiated a skill, they knew immediately, like, oh, I'm going to nail it because I did it perfectly. I did all the technique, and I know what I'm doing now. Or they go, oh, I did something wrong. I short-set it. I did something, I didn't do something right. And now I know what to do to compensate, to make it, And I would tell the athlete, I said, the judges, they don't know the difference if you made a mistake when you took off. As long as you land on your feet, they're going to complete the skill. They're going to go, well, okay, good score. But, you want to be safe, and then the consistency. And, I was telling my athletes that when I was in college, there were no levels. There's like if they had levels nowadays to compete against, somebody, if there was an Olympian on the other team, in college, you had to compete against that Olympian. If you weren't, an Olympian, then, but, I was telling my kids that I won a lot of competitions over the years, and I was never the best athlete. I was never the best athlete in the meet. But I had, I'd retrained myself so much after the injury that I was consistent. So I said, if you can hit all your routines, then that forces the other people to be able to hit all their routines. And if they do hit all the routines, you hit all the routines and they're a better athlete, then you don't go away feeling bad. You go away feeling great because you did your best, they did their best, and that's all you can do.
Yeah.
So
can you go into the process of, I've read a couple pages of your book. You shared those with me, and
yeah.
a pretty dramatic moment when you actually got injured, and then that left you in a place where I'm sure you had to assess what the heck am I doing now?
Yeah.
Now, and can you talk about the process of learning from there?
Yeah, the injury was, I was at practice, and I did a bunch of vaults that day, and I ran down the runway full speed, and I took off on the wrong foot. And so I knew immediately when I took off that I wasn't going to be able to generate enough power and height for rotation for the vault. So I decided to kick out midair just to do a single handspring, thinking it was going to help, save me from a crash landing, another abrupt landing on a 4-inch mat on a hardwood floor. Yeah. And the next thing I knew, I was about 1.5 feet off the ground going head first. And I didn't even have time to get my hands up. I got my hands to about right here, and I hit right square on the top of my head like an arrow being shot into the ground. And I fell flat on my stomach. It knocked me out. And when I woke up, my neck was broken and I was paralyzed. And when I spent 8 weeks in the hospital in traction, and I think somewhere about 4 weeks into it, the doctors came in and said, Gary, you're not responding to any of the treatments, so you're going to be paralyzed for the rest of your life. And that's when I assessed, I said, no, doc, that's not the plan, and I think it had to do with, being 20, a little bit, be a little cocky, an athlete. But also it just, I wasn't going to live my life that way because I had plans, I had goals, I wanted to be in the coaching world, and I wanted to finish college and all that. And so, I just started using what I had at the time, and, laying on your back 24/7, every day, with nothing else to do. I started visualizing. I started using visualization because I did that to see myself doing routines. And I started thinking, I started seeing myself recovered and healed and back, in the gym and doing all these things. And I went as far as to get specific and say, like, I can see the nerve impulse going from my brain through the, through the neural pathways and making my muscles work again. And, within, I think within a week or two after, getting the news, I got the feeling back in my legs and I was walking again, after that. My arms were still gone. And then they said there was nothing else they could do for me. It's 1972. They didn't know a lot then, I guess. But yeah, they just said, so they sent me home, and I went home and I lived in a team house with the guys. And I think one of the things that helped me a lot was being there with them. They didn't treat me any differently. Of course, they had to take care of me. They had to feed me and get me dressed and do things, but they treated me like normal. And I was the butt of a lot of jokes. They, made fun of me and stuff, which humor was a great healer too. Yeah. But they were there for moral support too. So I had the support and I had that. And then I just kept moving forward. And one day, I think it was probably 9 months. Yeah, I think about 9 months after the injury. and my arm still hadn't come back yet. And but I was in, you know, and I didn't mention that, you know, from the break, and you know, I could feel my torso, you know, again, but I, you know, I had no arms, but I was in constant pain all the time because the back muscles were spasming to protect the spinal cord. So I was always in discomfort. And I woke up one morning and the pain was gone. And I thought, wow, what the heck is this? Because I've been in pain for almost a year now. And I had stopped going to the doctor because he kept giving me the same scenario and the same prognosis and diagnosis, and I got tired of hearing it. So I said, no, I'm going to go out and heal myself, doc. So I made an appointment and went back in. And when I went back in, he was very upset with me because I hadn't been there, but he said we need to take x-rays. You know, in those days they didn't have MRIs or any of those kind of things. He said we need to take some x-rays and see where we're at. And I said, okay, fine, go ahead. So he comes back in and he goes, you need an operation immediately. And I'm going, what are you talking about? You know, because I thought I was healing, you know. And he says, yeah, he says, come over here and look at this x-ray. And, you know, the initial injury was, you know, a compression fracture, and it disintegrated the disc and it subluxed the vertebrae, you know, off and all that thing, cracked the vertebrae in half. Well, the back muscle spasm pulled everything back into alignment. So the original thing was, he said, you know, well, your neck is broken, but you're all aligned. So I figured the neck was healing. So I'd come over and look at this x-ray, and the vertebrae had slipped back way out. The vertebrae was still cracked in half, and now there was a big bone spur growing out of the front of the vertebrae where the body was trying to heal itself. And the doc says, you know how much a millimeter or two is? And I said, yeah. And he says, well, that's what your vertebrae is hanging on by. He said, someone could come up and slap you on the back and say, hey, Gary, how you doing today? And it could slip off, cut your cord, and then you're either going to be dead or you're going to be a quadriplegic for the rest of your life because you're not going to recover from that. And I said, oh my gosh. So I mean, within a day or two, I went in and he did an anterior fusion where they took a bone chip out of my iliac crest and fused it in, you know, and I put me in a neck brace. But still, after the operation, I still had no arms. They weren't working yet. And somewhere in the 6 months while I was trying to let the bone fuse together, I kept the visualization going. I kept everything going. I got the feeling and the movement back in my hands again. And so then it was like assessing and aware of, okay, here I am. I got everything back, but I've atrophied away to nothing. I can't support myself anymore. I can't do any of the apparatus. I can't do anything. So I had to start retraining myself. And I got hurt in 1972, and in 1975 I competed again. So it took me 3 years to get, but this time when I came back, I came back, you know, doing basics and retraining myself the right way and getting stronger. And I actually came back stronger after the injury than when I left before the injury. You know, and I was a little bit older now too. Now I'm like 22 years old, you know, 23 years old now, 23. Yeah. And so I was a little bit stronger then, but, and then that's, you know, kind of how I recovered. And from all of that, going through all of those different things, you know, I developed this program, you know, for my athletes.
Yeah. Okay. That's amazing. I just think that people don't have any idea how powerful visualization is.
Yeah. You know,
persistent visualization. You know.
Right.
I'm thinking of examples of people who back in the day healed themselves from polio. That, you know, it's not like the polio went away, but they retrained themselves to walk, and
yeah,
by observing others and using visualization, and you know, you needed the surgery, but without that you healed yourself.
Yeah, you know, and so yeah, that was the bone part, but the nerves and the recovery of that, you know, didn't have much to do with it. But yeah, it's amazing now, you know, like it's so amazing to have all of the science nowadays to back up everything that I did, you know, like Dr. Joe Dispenza, you know, and You Are the Placebo, you know, we have everything that we can heal ourselves with and do things, you know, and you know, how the subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between whether we actually physically did something or we just, you know, thought we did something, you know. And, you know, all of the studies nowadays, like I'm reading, about how they did studies at Yale University, where they did mock operations on people's knees. They said they were going to go and orthoscopically repair this, the knee, for these people. And what they did is they went in and just poked some holes in their knees, and and said, okay, the surgery was successful, and lo and behold, what they believe,
Yeah.
they went home and they were pain free.
Yeah.
They had no operation, but they're pain free,
Yeah.
And then they had the same I think at Yale University they did a thing about visualizing, and they had people actually do the same exercise, like they were doing like curls, and they were doing it with a certain amount of weight. And they had one group, for 9 weeks or whatever, do actual physical working out.
Yep.
And they had the other group just visualize for 9 weeks with this, with the kind of with the same amount of weight, in their mind. And at the end of the study, the group that physically worked out improved their muscle mass, and strength by 55%. And the group that just visualized improved their strength and muscle mass by 35%.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so you think, oh my God, and people, what? And it just, and they did another one where they had people just practice piano scales. They had they had people practice them, and they had the other people just visualize them. And at the end, they both could play the piano scales.
That's right. Yeah.
It's like, wow, the power of the mind.
Exactly. And they've even had people prevent atrophy in a cast because when you visualize sending signals to a muscle, you're actually sending those same neurological signals to their muscle. And,
yeah.
A lot of our strength comes from an efficient, strong nervous system response, not just from muscle growth. So.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. I that's kind of like what I want to do now, is I was all about kinesthetic awareness in the sport of gymnastics. Now it's more like awareness of what's possible, if a scrawny little, kid, that didn't know anything about all of these things about the mind and different things, consciously, subconsciously, I obviously knew about it because I did it. But, if with no training and anything else, if I can do it, anybody can do it. It's not like it's not like I'm some superhero or something. I just made a decision, used the tools that I had, available to me, and just went on from there. And we all have that. The most powerful tool we have is our mind, and if we can learn how to harness that, the so-called impossible is possible.
Yeah. Yeah. So another example of how we don't have the Greeks used to say a sound mind and a sound body.
Mm-hmm.
At least that's what we're told. But it's really not that. It's really not a mind and a body. It's all part of this. The nervous system is one system.
Yep.
And so what you say, you want to find out what's possible, and I think we already have lots of experience with telling ourselves what isn't possible.
Yeah, that's the big thing. It's like from all of our, and we all have that little voice in the back of our head, that says, I like to do this, but then the voice says, no, you can't do that. You're because of our experiences and our programming and everything else, and so we tell ourselves stories. I always just, like for me, for me was, when I was 19 years old, before I got hurt, my girlfriend and a bunch of friends wanted to teach me how to snow ski. And I'd never been able to snow ski because my coach wouldn't let me go because he thought I might get hurt or something, So, but I thought, okay, I'll go do it, And so, here's all these people saying, yeah, they know me, from, being a gymnast and water skiing and all these different things. And they figure, well, yeah, you'll probably be out skiing us by noontime, or whatever. And I'm thinking, yeah, maybe, I don't know. But, I'm thinking it's going to be a piece of cake. Well, long story short was I wasn't dressed properly. I went up there, in Levi's and a t-shirt and all these different, and my girlfriend was trying to teach me. I didn't take a lesson or anything, and she really didn't know how to teach me that. So I crashed and burned and was embarrassed, and I had to go sit in the lodge for the whole day. So here's my mind. My mind says, because my ego is bruised, my mind says, okay, let's make up a story. What story can we make up? And the story was, oh, I'm a water skier. I don't snow ski because I don't like to be cold. I don't like to be cold. And so I told myself that story, and I told everybody else, says, do you snow ski? Nope, I don't like to be cold. So I limited myself. Well, at 42 years old, 23 years later, a friend of mine says, I'm gonna take you up snow skiing. I said, no, you don't understand. I don't snow ski. I don't do that. And I had the worst experience of my life, when I was 19. He goes, no, but you weren't, I'll teach you. So long story short, again, he takes me up, he dresses me right, he gives me all the instruction, he tells me some stuff, and I learned how to ski, within, an hour or so. I was skiing down the slope, and then we went up to the intermediate slope, and I skied all day long, and I had the greatest time. But the thing that for me was, I thought, what hit me was, I was sitting on the chairlift in this beautiful scenery in Lake Tahoe, and I'm seeing the mountainside, I'm seeing everything, and I'm thinking, gosh, look at what I missed out on for 23 years. And then I started thinking, what else did I limit myself from and miss out on? And the next thing I knew, I decided to go back to school, and go back to the master's program and do these things. And I had to go, to get back into school, one of the requirements was to take a writing skills test. Well, here's another story. My mother, from the beginning, said, you're terrible at English, you're a terrible writer, you don't know how to spell, I didn't learn phonics, all these different things. So I'm thinking, oh my God. So I'm having an anxiety attack, thinking, oh my gosh, I got grades to get back into school, but I can't get back into school unless I take a writing skills test. Well, I take the writing skills test, and 3 English professors say, oh yeah, you're a good writer. Oh my gosh, so, and then that spurs on chain reaction. So now I'm writing a book. So the kid that doesn't know how to write and is a terrible writer is now writing a book. You know what I mean? It's like, look at that. Look what happened. And I have the same mind. I healed myself, but the same mind held me back, in another way.
Yeah. I think we start telling our stories to ourselves that way at a very young age, and they just,
Yep.
By the time we're 12, 13, we've already made up our mind about what we're good at in many ways, I think.
Yep.
But if we might be open to a little bit of change, you might find that those things are not all true.
Exactly. It is. It's, if it's kind of like, if, I read somewhere, I can't remember who said it, but, it's like, I think it was Tony Robbins said something like, life, doesn't happen to you, it happens for you. And if we can look at it that way, like if, all these things, these so-called negative experiences that cause us to think of, who we really, who we think we are, because that's the whole deal is, the truth, of who we think we are is real truth to us, you know what I mean? But in reality, it's not the truth. It's not who we really are, and I found that out the hard way by, the ski story, and then all these different things. So it's like, yeah, I totally believe that was the truth about me. I could not do that.
Yeah.
And even with all of the things you think about, like, well, geez, I knew how to ride a unicycle. I was a gymnast. I'm strong. I'm flexible. I got good balance, but I can't snow ski. Well, what's the deal with that? But I truly believed it. That was a limitation that I believed about myself. And those are the false limitations that hold us all back from reaching our full potential.
Yeah. So
yeah,
I can tell that you've spoken to a lot of people, and what you're talking about comes through really clearly. But do you have anything you'd like to add on how you teach athletes to this idea of you can expand your self-image as you go through life and keep expanding that and keep doing the things that are you, but in a broader spectrum?
Yeah, I think that's, I think that what the basics that, that I had them go through, I think taught them that, you know what I mean? It's like they would, have to go through the step-by-step procedure, and, and they would sometimes question, say, like, why am I doing this? And then I would show them. I would say, hey, look, you're doing this part because this is where you're trying to get to. Without that, you can't do this and you can't do that. And so they go, oh, okay. So I said, you want to do this skill over here, right? And they said, yes. And I said, well, look, here's this basic thing that you have to learn. And then I, if I could carry them through the skill, to show them, then I say, without that, this whole thing doesn't work. So it's like, I think the discipline of slowing down to actually speed up their progress, made sense to them after they bought into it, because I really had to tell the kids, up front every single time, like, yeah, they're boring, a pain in the rear end, and no fun, but they're so crucial to teaching you, all about all these different things and how you can build on and go and keep progressing all the time. So, I think that I also, I talked about all the different things, like, being fearful of something, fear and excitement are probably feel the same, but we just put labels on them, so I would say, like, hey, if you're nervous, then you might want to harness that nervous energy to your advantage, to be able to do something with it instead of let it work against you. So I would try to take all the different aspects, of everything that they had to go through, and put them in situations, like you used to hear about Tiger Woods, like he'd go throw the balls way out some crazy place where, nobody thought it was impossible to get out of there, and he learned how to get out of there, So we would make situations happen in the gym, like if they were on balance beam or something, we'd make a loud noise, because to see if that would throw them off or something like that, just to say, look, if you can work through this, what's having an audience out there doing for you,
Yeah.
And and another thing that that helped me a lot, because I'm glad you brought this up, because as as an athlete myself back in the 60s, there wasn't competitive sports when I was younger. Like, Little League was the only thing. So we didn't have like organized, sports. We didn't have soccer, and we didn't have, any of these kind of things that they have nowadays, the youth leagues. And so, I didn't learn how to compete. So when I got into competition in high school, I didn't know how to handle the nerves, and I would fall apart lots of times in competition. And and I would, because it was win at all costs. Winning was a big thing. Like, you got to win, you got to win, you got to win. And it's like, I remember all the way until I was in college, I didn't realize, a different point of view. And I remember same thing. I was at a meet and I was warming up, and here's these 6,000 people coming in, and so I was stretching one time, and I thought, why do these people show up to this competition every time? What are they coming for? And I came to the conclusion, like, well, they're coming here, to be entertained and see things that they think are impossible to do, And so I thought, you know what? I actually bring joy to these people, and I think about winning. So I thought, you know what? I'm just going to perform for the crowd from now on.
Wow.
And the funniest thing happened, I started performing for the crowd, and then I started winning. Because I had a different focus, so I would pass that on to the kids too, and different things, just different perspective.
What it is to be a human being, and they want to see something beautiful.
Yep.
And they want to see something inspiring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was just such a revelation. Like, wow, you've been out here, killing yourself, trying to win and sabotaging yourself mentally and emotionally, and then all of a sudden you change your perspective on, wow, I actually can, do something nice, be of service to the crowd, do something for them, and then all of a sudden you start doing that, and you start, hitting all your routines and winning things, and you weren't thinking about anything except for, bringing joy to the crowd.
I think that's right. Whatever we do, whatever we're involved in, we want to be involved in, whatever our particular niche in life is, it can be service.
Yeah, exactly.
I have a friend who's writing a book called, I think it's about done, but it won't be out till June, but it's called Slowing Down to Run Faster. So you brought up the subject of slowing down. So if you hurry, you can go really fast to the limits of your present skill, but you can't learn anything new, because you can't learn in a hurry.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I used to, when I gave coaching clinics all the time, I would say, if one of the biggest mistakes that a lot of, coaches make with the elite athletes, or the, when they see them, because, you get these kids in your gym and you go, oh my gosh, this kid's going to be, fantastic, and no matter what you ask them to do, they can do a lot of stuff. But I said, if you push them too fast too soon, I said they're gonna hit a plateau.
Yeah.
And then that's it. And then guess what? They're gonna have to go all the way back and learn the basic things to get them to to the upper levels where they're supposed to go. And they're not going to be so, receptive to it at that point. I said, so it's like slow down to speed up your progression. So it's like I said, just fight the urge to take those great athletes and push them as fast as you can, because they'll do it. And that was that mistake that I made when I was in college. I could physically do a lot of stuff, but I went too fast and boom. But it's like, yeah, you can only go to a certain level in anything, in life or sports or whatever, at a reckless speed, and then you're just going to plateau out, and then you're done, and then you're going to have to go back and do something else.
Figure out why you can't do anymore, or you'll assume that you can't do anymore.
Exactly. Yeah. Then you tell yourself a story. Well, I guess that's my potential. I'm done.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So somehow, it's not entirely one or the other, because you've got some good skills, go out and use them. But if you can weave that process together so that you're always slowing down to learn something new, you're always really involved in the details of what you're doing, but you do go out there and use what you've got too.
Yeah.
So you can't be perfect, before you do anything, but
no,
that idea of slowing down has really got to be in there.
Yeah, I think so. And you just, it's so. I think nowadays in the fast pace of the world, everything is, we want it easy, we want it fast, we want it now, and it's like, well, some things can happen like that, but the things that are really important to you and to reach your full potential of whatever it is you're trying to do, you're going to have to put in the time and effort, to develop the awareness, of all things.
Countercultural right now. It's loud and fast.
Yep. Yeah, it is. It's and it's too bad, because it's funny because when I told you I taught myself how to ride a unicycle when I was young, and what I did was I went to a 4th of July parade, and I saw this the Blue Devils unicycle club doing these amazing things, running, doing all these different patterns and missing each other and doing crazy things. And I just went, I want to do that, and then I went home and I asked my dad if I could buy a unicycle, and he said, well, let's see how much they are. And of course they were way too expensive, so I thought, well, boy, now what? And then I thought, well, could I build one? And he said, yeah, we have a tricycle wheel that has pedals, So I actually built a unicycle. And then I was like, okay, now how do I learn how to ride it?
Yeah.
I don't have anybody to teach me. I don't have any. And I thought, I saw, like I thought about the guys that had to learn how to walk over again, on the parallel bars, and I thought, well, we got bamboo poles in the backyard. We got a picnic table and some benches, So I tied the bamboo poles to the picnic table and the benches and made parallel bars. And I hooked my seat onto the thing, and I taught myself how to, ride that distance. It took me a long time, but I taught myself how to ride the distance. And then I took the things away and I taught myself how to ride it. And then I had to teach myself how to get on it, which, of course I face planted a couple times. And then I grabbed onto the side of the house and, to learn how to pedal, because I saw how they did it in the parade. But, it took me, I don't know how long it took me, because I did it over the summertime, but I just practice and practice and practice and practice. And I had to, I just couldn't go ride a unicycle. So.
Okay, so that's fascinating right there. Yeah. So you built yourself a safe environment and to start with, and really broke it down into, how do I get started and how do I go further? Yeah.
Yeah, because I knew that. The first problem was, how can I get on this thing? Because I'm just going to crash and I can't even get on it. So I thought, well, I need to have something to hook the seat onto. So I hooked the seat onto the picnic table, and then so I could get on it, and then I got up off the picnic table and then walked on the parallel bars and tried to, got one pedal, then the next pedal, then, and then I got 4 pedals, or, and then I just kept, I could ride from one side to the other. And then, I took that away and then I could only ride straight. And then I had to learn how to turn it, and one of the things that happened by going through the parallel bar thing was, when I got to the end, I had to pivot around. And of course, the only way I could do it was by, shifting my hips and shoulders. So I thought, oh, well, that must be the way you turn when you're not, when you're on your own riding. You don't have to go so hard. But so that led into the, the awareness of, well, this is how you turn yourself, so then I could ride around and turn and do everything, then I had to learn how to get on it, and, the first time I thought about, I saw how they, put one foot on the pedal and then pushed it back down and put the other foot on the pedal and took off. Well, I pushed it and the unicycle went out the back end and I fell on my stomach on the concrete, and I thought, maybe I should go over to the side of the house and put my hand on the house and pedal a little easier and get up on it for a while until I figure out the amount of pressure, kind of like driving a clutch for the first time or something, and then you get used to that. And then now I could get on it. Now I could turn, now I could ride it. So then I started riding it all over the neighborhood.
Yeah. So that's interesting because you could have told yourself that you couldn't ride a unicycle, which of course you can't ride a unicycle. But you weren't thinking about those things. You were only thinking about the learning process.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's a pretty cool story.
Yeah.
And you were learning on a unicycle that wasn't really designed to be a unicycle. So the balance probably wasn't as good as if you bought a unicycle, but you were learning very thoroughly.
Yeah.
I think the world doesn't need anything more than it needs awareness.
Yeah, I think that's the whole thing. The more that we're aware of things, because that's the whole key to, to making any kind of, an adjustment or change or, learn whatever you need to learn. Like if you're not aware of something, then, you're not going to you're not going to do anything about it. If I'm not even aware that I'm telling myself stories, I'm not going to see what kind of potential I can have. If I'm not aware of, I'm not strong enough or flexible enough to do something, I can't do this, or, whatever it is, so it's like, awareness is the key to success. I mean, it's the key to everything, because without it, we're not gonna make any adjustments to do anything.
Yeah, and I just want to echo that. I've been thinking about writing I'm working on rewriting a book, and I'm thinking about writing another one, maybe called The Three Connections, which of course the first one would be a connection to the environment, or in your case, just the physical environment, gravity, and riding that unicycle and what's around you and things like that.
Yeah.
So it could be the natural environment, but connection to the environment, the world you're in. And second, that awareness is the key to being able to do anything you want to do. And third, the connection, to the world around you, to being able to share these things.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm just echoing what you said there. And can you tell us? Go ahead.
I was gonna say I can't wait to read that book.
Yeah. The other one I'm working on. So only have one out right now.
Yeah.
But I know you're working with a very fine editor. Can you tell us the title of your book and when it will be available?
Well, right now, the title is Broken to Brilliant.
Wow.
And I don't have a set date, but I'm just starting to rededicate it, about a little bit more, and getting a little bit more about the awareness in there, to tie everything together. So I'm hoping that it's going to be out sometime, this year, by the end of the year, hopefully.
Yeah. All right. So by the end of the year, and if you have a pre-order on that, you've got my email. Let me know about it.
Okay, I will. Yeah, and anybody that wants, yeah. Perfect.
So for our listeners, we're going to get this out on YouTube later, and I will send you the file, the file of the recording. And
okay.
You can share it with however you want. If you're interested in that file, I'll send it to you.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'd love to. Yeah, I'd love it.
Okay, and is there anything else that you would like people to know about how to contact you for speaking or for?
Yeah.
I don't know if you work with people one-on-one now, or any coaching you're doing, or.
In the future, I'm going to be doing, workshops and working one-on-one. Right now, I'm focusing on the speaking, and so if you're looking for a speaker, you can go to my website, GaryBuckman.com, and it's Buckman with two N's, Buckmann.
Okay.
So GaryBuckman.com, and you can sign up there.
Okay. Well, I want to really thank you for the interview today. It's a lot of gems in there. I appreciate what you've shared.
Well, I thank you for having me, Scott. I'm glad to, meet you, and I'm really, admire your work. So thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Yeah, and in addition to being a wonderful interview, it was actually very fun too. So appreciate
Yeah,
it. Yeah,
yeah, I had a good time too, and that was my main goal. I just wanted to relax and have a good time.
yeah. Okay, well, it was delightful to talk to you. You're very easy to interview, and I learned a lot. So I guess at this point we'll stop the recording, but don't forget to fill me in on that book. I'm definitely wanting to read that. So,
Okay, I will. Thanks, Scott.
okay.
All right.
All right. So we're going to stop the recording here.